What happens when a carefully planned morning show interview turns into a slow burn showdown? What happens when a royal reputation meets a host who refuses to be thrown off course, and every question becomes a spark for something bigger? This is the story of Meghan Markle's tense appearance on CBS This Morning, and how it began with smiles but quickly unraveled. It started with polite pleasantries in the warm glow of morning television, but within minutes, the tone shifted. Questions became sharper, answers became colder, and the air in the studio turned electric. The sun had barely risen over Manhattan, but the CBS This Morning studio was already buzzing. Producers scurried between control rooms and the set, camera operators adjusted angles, and makeup artists hovered nearby for last-minute touch-ups. This wasn't just any Thursday morning. Meghan Markle was in the building. The booking had taken weeks. Meghan's team had sent over a list of approved topics, all centered around her latest charities initiatives, women's empowerment programs, and a handful of safe personal anecdotes. The instructions were clear. Steer clear of anything too personal, avoid questions about the royal family drama, and do not, under any circumstances, pry into her marriage. Nate Burleson, former NFL player turned respected morning show host, had been chosen to lead the segment. Known for his warmth and professionalism, he could put any guest at ease. But he also had a journalist's curiosity, and he'd been quietly encouraged by producers to push the conversation just enough to make it interesting. At 8:15 a.m., Meghan walked on set. She was immaculate, an ivory blazer over soft beige trousers, hair pinned back into a classic low bun. Her makeup was flawless, her walk deliberate, chin slightly raised, posture regal. She smiled as she approached the table, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Nate rose to greet her. "Good morning, Meghan. We're so happy to have you here." "Good morning, Nate," she replied smoothly, shaking his hand. "Thank you for having me. This should be interesting." The first few minutes flowed exactly as planned. Nate asked about her new foundation projects, and Meghan gave polished, well-rehearsed answers. She talked about supporting women entrepreneurs, expanding educational access for young girls, and promoting sustainability initiatives. Her tone was calm, her delivery precise, a masterclass in media training. But then Nate decided to take the first step off the prepared path. "Meghan, your foundation's work is making headlines, in a good way, but many viewers are also curious about something else. Do you see yourself returning to the UK anytime soon?" Her smile tightened. "Whether I go to the UK or not is entirely my decision, Nate. And frankly, it's amusing that it's still a topic of conversation." Nate kept his composure. "I think people are curious because of your history with the royal family. It's a natural question. Perhaps your viewers should focus more on issues in their own country," she said, crossing her arms slightly. Her tone was light, but the jab was unmistakable. A subtle shift passed through the room. Nate, sensing the change, leaned in a little. "Understandable, but your departure from the royal family is still one of the most talked about moments in recent history. Some people still debate whether you and Prince Harry chose to leave or were pushed out." Meghan's head tilted, and her eyes locked on him. "Pushed out? I can't believe you'd use that word. We made our choice, and I'm not here to rehash tabloid headlines. But I suppose that's more entertaining than discussing real work, isn't it?" Nate gave a polite smile. "My job is to ask questions people at home might want answered. Headlines or not, it's part of the bigger picture." She sat back, crossing her legs, her gaze briefly drifting to the ceiling before returning to him. "Then perhaps your bigger picture needs a little reframing." He moved to the next question, this one more personal. "Your marriage has been under intense scrutiny. Some outlets have suggested there might be challenges lately. Is there any truth to that?" Her lips curved into something halfway between a smile and a smirk. "I don't live my life based on what the tabloids print, Nate. Maybe you shouldn't either. I'm only asking because it's been widely reported. And I'm telling you," she cut in sharply, "that my marriage is not your concern. If your producers think this is the best way to fill airtime, maybe they should reconsider their priorities." From the side, Whoopi Goldberg leaned toward her microphone. "Maybe we could pivot back to your charity work." Meghan shook her head. Oh, I'm happy to talk about my charity work, but clearly, that's not what this is really about. Nate kept his voice level, but there was a slight edge now. We're here to have an open conversation, Meghan. My questions aren't meant to be disrespectful. She gave a light laugh, though it sounded more like dismissal. Disrespectful? No, just a little beneath the level I'd hoped for. The words hung in the air. The tension was now visible, thick enough to feel even through the camera lens. Nate shuffled his cue cards, buying himself a second to read the room. The control room was already on high alert, whispering in his earpiece to steer it back and keep things civil. But civility was slipping away, and both he and Meghan knew it. So, Nate said, keeping his tone light, let's talk about what life looks like for you right now, away from the royal duties, away from palace walls. What's a normal day for Meghan Markle? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she tilted her head, glanced briefly toward the cameras, and said, normal? That's a funny word coming from someone asking me about royal duties 5 minutes ago. The audience gave a polite chuckle, but Nate didn't bite. I'm just curious how you've adjusted. You've built a new life, new home, new projects. What does that look like? Her voice was syrupy sweet, but the undertone was razor sharp. It looks like exactly what I want it to look like, Nate, which is something I'm not sure you can understand when your schedule is decided by producers in your ear. Whoopi shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Joy Behar, sensing the tension, tried to jump in with a lighter question about Meghan's recent trip to California wine country. Meghan smiled politely at Joy, answered briefly, and then turned right back to Nate as if daring him to continue. He did. There's also been ongoing public debate about whether you and Prince Harry will ever return to any formal royal duties. Is that door still open? Fair point, Nate said, nodding. But the question wasn't about relevance. It was about whether you see any kind of reconciliation or return. She cut him off, her voice sharper now. And I'm telling you, I'm not here to feed gossip cycles. The monarchy can run itself just fine without my daily schedule making headlines. The room went still for a beat. Nate pressed on, though more cautiously. Some might say it's not gossip, but part of an ongoing public story you were once a central figure in. Meghan's lips curled into that half smile again. Some might say a lot of things, Nate, but that doesn't make them right or relevant. Her tone had shifted into something more openly condescending now, each word polished but barbed. Nate took a breath and tried another angle. There's also been media chatter about your relationship with Prince Harry. That life in the public eye can put strain on a marriage. How do you respond to those who wonder if the pressure has taken a toll? She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. I respond by wondering why anyone thinks my marriage is an acceptable topic for casual morning TV. Are you planning to ask about my grocery list next? My Netflix queue? Nate smiled tightly. I'm asking because it's been widely reported and because people are curious. And I'm telling you, she interrupted, that people's curiosity doesn't dictate my boundaries. Maybe you should try that sometime. Joy leaned toward her mic. Okay, maybe let's bring it back to your new project. But Meghan wasn't finished. No, Joy, I think it's interesting. Apparently, my marriage status is more exciting than the thousands of people our programs are helping every year. Nate kept his voice even, but his patience was clearly wearing thin. I think we can talk about both, the work you're doing and the context in which you're doing it. That's part of telling the whole story. She gave a soft laugh, shaking her head. The whole story, according to you, maybe, but I've lived it, Nate, and I can assure you your version leaves out quite a bit. Nate adjusted his posture, leaning forward just enough to signal he wasn't backing off. His eyes stayed on Meghan, calm but focused, the way a chess player studies a board after a surprise move. Let's talk about something you've mentioned in the past, he began. You've spoken about feeling unwelcome in the UK after stepping back from royal duties. Do you think that sentiment would still be there if you returned? Meghan tilted her head, her expression caught between disbelief and disdain. Do I think I'd get a warm welcome? Nate, this isn't a family barbecue. We're talking about an entire institution that made it clear where I stood, or didn't stand from day one. Still, Nate said, voice even, you've built a public brand around compassion and bridging divides. Wouldn't returning, even briefly, be an opportunity to show that bridge building in action? She gave a short, sharp laugh. And here I thought bridge building required two sides willing to meet in the middle. You can't build a bridge if the other side keeps lighting matches. The audience let out a collective ooh, sensing the sharpness of her tone. Joy glanced toward Whoopi, silently urging her to step in, but Nate pressed forward. Let's address something else that's been in the headlines. The reports that you and Harry were, in a sense, pushed out of the royal fold. How accurate is that from your perspective? Meghan's eyes narrowed slightly. You want my perspective? Fine. It wasn't a gentle nudge, Nate. It was a very clear message. You're not welcome here unless you play by our rules, and I've never been someone who survives by making myself smaller to fit someone else's comfort zone. That's a strong statement, Nate said carefully. It's a true one, she shot back without hesitation. The air in the room seemed to tighten. Whoopi tried to interject with a diplomatic comment about different viewpoints, but Meghan kept her gaze locked on Nate. Then came the next pivot. There's also been speculation, Nate began, about the pressures your public life puts on your marriage. People wonder if that strain has. Meghan leaned forward sharply, cutting him off. People wonder. That's always how it starts, isn't it? People wonder. And suddenly, people wondering becomes a headline, and the headline becomes a narrative. And here you are, Nate, feeding it. I'm not feeding anything, Nate said, his patience still intact, but the edge in his voice just visible now. I'm asking what viewers are already talking about. That's part of the job. And my job, Meghan replied coolly, is to decide which questions are worth my time and which are thinly disguised gossip. Nate's jaw flexed for the briefest second before he smiled. And yet, here we are. The audience murmured. Even through the cameras, it was clear the tension was now undeniable. Whoopi leaned in. Let's take a breath here. We don't want to lose sight of why Meghan's here, but Meghan wasn't letting go. No, Whoopi, it's fine. I can handle tough questions. I just find it interesting that when I sit down to talk about charity and community, the conversation somehow becomes about palace politics and tabloid rumors. Nate gave a measured nod. Sometimes the public context is part of the story. Whether you like it or not, Meghan, you're not just a private citizen. The way you left the royal family, the public interest in your marriage, your place in British and American media, that all frames how your work is seen. And maybe, Meghan countered, her tone now openly condescending, it's time for the media to realize that they're the ones framing it wrong. A beat of silence followed. Cameras zoomed in just slightly, catching the charged eye contact. In the control room, producers were already debating whether to cut to commercial, but they could sense the moment building. The slow boil was about to hit a rolling, unstoppable boil. Nate adjusted his suit jacket, leaning forward just enough to send a signal without raising his voice. Meghan, I've done a lot of interviews with public figures, and I'll be honest, most of them understand that questions about their public image aren't personal attacks. But with you, it seems every topic is met with defensiveness or dismissal. Meghan sat back, crossing her legs deliberately, her expression one of feigned amusement. Maybe that's because most of your guests aren't used to being asked the same recycled questions over and over. You think you're uncovering something groundbreaking, Nate, but you're just rerunning the greatest hits from the tabloids. Nate gave a short, humorless laugh. You know, I've tried to keep this professional. I've given you space to explain your point of view, to talk about your work, but it's becoming very clear that you're not here for a conversation. You're here to control the narrative and to shut down anything that doesn't fit it. Her eyes narrowed. Control the narrative? That's rich coming from the media. He held her gaze, his voice still calm but now with steel behind it. No, Meghan, what's rich is someone sitting here on national television acting like the media is the enemy, while at the same time booking themselves on every major platform to promote their image. What's rich is claiming you want privacy and then making a career out of telling and selling your side of the story. The audience reacted audibly, a low ripple of murmurs and gasps. Meghan leaned forward, her tone now dripping with sarcasm. So now you're going to tell me what my career is about. Maybe next you'll tell me what my marriage is like, too. Nate didn't flinch. You brought up your marriage by shutting down the question earlier. And frankly, your attitude in this interview is exactly why people see you as out of touch. You're not engaging, you're lecturing. And when someone challenges you, you get dismissive and condescending. The studio felt like it had shrunk. Even Whoopi and Joy were silent now, their attempts to mediate completely abandoned. Nate sat back slightly, his tone shifting, sharper, more direct. Let's call this what it is. You're an entitled royal kid who married into a global brand and now trades on that name every chance you get. You want the perks of the platform without the accountability that comes with it. Meghan's mouth fell open slightly, genuine shock flickering across her face before she masked it with indignation. Excuse me? You heard me, Nate said, his voice unwavering. This show is about conversation, not coronation. And if you can't handle being asked straightforward questions without insulting the interviewer, then maybe this isn't the place for you. The silence was absolute. The only sound was the faint hum of the lights overhead. Meghan's jaw tightened. So what, Nate? You're telling me to leave? He didn't hesitate. Yes, I am, because this isn't going anywhere productive, and our viewers deserve better than watching a guest sneer their way through a segment. The gasp from the audience was loud enough to make Meghan glance toward them. Her voice was now icy. This is unbelievable. I came here to talk about important issues, and instead I get ambushed and insulted on live television. Nate rose from his chair, still composed, but making it clear the segment was over. You came here for publicity, Meghan. Let's not pretend otherwise. And you got it. Just not the kind you wanted. Meghan stood as well, unclipping her mic with sharp, deliberate movements. You know what, Nate? I don't have to sit here and be disrespected by someone who clearly has no idea what it means to be under the kind of scrutiny I've endured. I've dealt with bigger, uglier forces than this show, and I'll still be standing long after this segment is forgotten. She turned toward the edge of the set, her heels striking the floor in sharp, echoing clicks. Security had already moved subtly closer, though no one touched her. Just before disappearing behind the curtain, she stopped, glanced back and delivered one last shot. Good luck with your ratings, Nate. You are going to need them. Nate didn't look away. Don't worry, Meghan. After today, I think we'll be just fine. With that, she swept off the set, leaving behind a stunned audience, two silent co-hosts, and a moment that would be replayed on social media for weeks to come. The cameras lingered on Nate for a beat too long before cutting to a hastily cued commercial. But by then, the damage in the television gold was already done. And just like that, Meghan Markle was gone, leaving a silent studio and one of the most talked about moments in CBS This Morning history. Was Nate right to shut down the interview? Or did he cross the line? Did Meghan overreact, or was she justified in walking away? I want to hear from you. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more explosive moments from celebrity interviews, hit that like button, squirt, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because in the world of live television, you never know when the next clash will turn into history.